What is TCP/IP and how is it used? In an earlier video, we looked at the OSI model in computer networking, and I want to touch on that OSI model just slightly one more time here before getting into TCP/IP in this video. Prior to the OSI model, there were a lot of different protocols being used all over the place. Different manufacturers each used different protocols and communication and troubleshooting methods on their own network setups. And for them to all connect and work together, they worked together to come up with the OSI model as a standardized set of rules and functions that everyone could follow. So everyone was on the same page with hardware, software, protocols, rules, and connections used in computer networks. By everyone following the same 7-layer OSI model standard, all networks were also interoperable with each other. In the modern day, we now primarily refer to the TCPIP model, which is based on the older OSI model. And if you watch this previous video that I made about the OSI model, it will explain the OSI model layers and how those work. So I invite you to check out that video here on my YouTube channel. And I want to show in this short video just how similar the TCP/IP model is to the old OSI model, and talk shortly about how some terms used by network techs, admins, and engineers out in the field still kind of fall back on the OSI model, but TCP/IP is still our primary modern day reference. So I'm putting the OSI model up here on the screen for reference, and the TCP/IP model only contains 4 layers. Although some in the industry will refer to TCP/IP as having 5 layers, but for the purposes of taking the CompTIA Network Plus exam, last I checked, CompTIA will reference the TCP/IP model with only 4 layers and expect you to know those 4 layers and how they're referenced along with the OSI model, or how they compare to the OSI model. I also want to make a side note here by clarifying that the TCP/IP model is not the same as talking about TCP/IP protocols used on computer networks. I'll get more into detail in a later video when we actually talk about TCP/IP protocols and how those work. And yes, they do have a direct reference to this TCP/IP model, but just keep in mind that we are only talking about the TCP/IP model in this video. And before we get into those 4 layers, keep in mind that TCP/IP doesn't have a standards organization or body to define those layers. Unlike the OSI model that was defined by the ISO and further by the IEEE, TCP/IP is just a widely accepted model in the industry overall, but as yet is not defined in any way. An example of it not being defined by a standards body is the fact that some refer to the first layer in the TCP/IP model as the link layer, and others will call it the network interface layer. So since there's no defining body or organization, it kind of depends on who you're talking to. As you get more into the computer networking field, all of this will start to come second nature to you, and you'll know what's being referred to regardless of what it's being called. So I just wanted to point that out. And quickly, I also want to point out that the TCP/IP model helps point out the flaws that were inherent in the OSI model, as the OSI model wasn't able to describe the TCP/IP protocols, again, which we'll talk about later. And the TCP/IP model fixes that issue for all intents and purposes. So the first layer in the TCP/IP model we want to talk about is the link layer. This layer encompasses layers 1 and layers 2 of the OSI model. And again, it is sometimes referred to as the link layer and sometimes as the network interface layer. Again, it depends on where you are and how people are talking about that. The best way to think about the link layer is to understand that it deals with Ethernet frames and the physical media on a network. Once you strip away the frame portion and start looking at the actual packets, then you have moved out of this link layer and into the next layer up in the TCP/IP model, the internet layer. The internet layer directly correlates to the network layer in the OSI model. Now, some say it should be called the IP packet layer because of the fact that at the internet layer, you're actually talking about devices and protocols that deal with pure IP packets. This is where everything is focused on getting an IP packet to its correct destination and remembering from which IP address it came, the source IP address. Then we get into the transport layer. Just like the internet layer, mapping directly to the network layer in the OSI model, the transport layer in the TCP/IP model maps directly to the transport layer in the OSI model, both in function and in reference. And then last but not least, you have the application layer. And the application layer of the TCP/IP model actually combines the same features of the top 3 layers of the OSI model. The application, presentation, and session layers of the OSI model all together become the application layer of the TCP/IP model. So that's to simplify it and make it easier to work with as a model compared to the OSI model.